Amy, thank you for being here and for joining me on the podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat with you too. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I was actually just saying to Amy that it was probably a couple of months ago now, but I was listening to another podcast episode that you were on. And I remember going for my daily walk and I'm listening to it. And at that time, I had someone very close to me in my life going through a big personal setback. And I just remember saying to myself, like I sent it, I shared the episode straight away. And this person, I don't know how many podcasts they listen to, right? Like, I don't know how many books they read or podcasts they listen to, but I remember saying, Amy, I was like, oh, if he would just listen to this, I know that it would give him some hope, which is sometimes what you need when you're in this place of setbacks. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, because I have your book right here as well in my phone, which is the Setback Cycle. And I actually want to buy the physical book. I can see it behind you as
It's
well.
very pretty. We designed a
Yeah,
very pretty cover, so it's nice to
it
put on your
is.
bookshelf.
It is. And, the book, I just want to say thank you for writing this book. So I'm a highlighter. And I've actually found myself, I'm highlighting every page of your book.
That's the biggest honor. That's the biggest honor. Thank
There's
you. Wow.
testimonial when someone highlights pretty much
Wow. Yeah.
every page of your book. But it was just, I just want to thank you because whether he listened to that or not, I just thought if he does, it will say, wow, I'm going to be okay. And then, of course, it got me thinking about the setback moments that I've had.
Right.
And even, I have a couple in mind that my brain keeps going to, and I was thinking of before our conversation. And I think at those times, you do feel isolated, or I'll speak for myself. You can feel isolated, and the self doubt can just mount up, and the fear and the freeze mode. And reading your book, I know it's going to help a lot of people go, okay, I'm going to be okay. So thank you for writing it.
Oh my God. Anytime. What you just said is exactly why I wrote it, because I saw so many people going through setbacks and noticed a trend and said, they're going to go through this cycle anyway. There seems to be a common sort of process that everyone goes through. What if we could inform them better so that they can understand what they're experiencing as they experience it, and like arm them with the tools they need so they can cycle through their setback productively and like, I mean, this sounds kind of gross, but like get the most they can from it because they're going to learn. They might as well make it productive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to dive into all of that. I want to dive into your tools and your frameworks that you have, the neuroscience, just with the research that you've done as well. And I mean, let's start there because what I guess piqued your curiosity to become an expert in setbacks and to go down this path and do this research and speak with all of these people to be able to come up with this? What sparked that curiosity? Was it your own journey first?
It was not my own journey first. It was, maybe subconsciously I was struggling and I didn't realize it. And I imagine that's why I was so drawn to these stories and noticing the setback part of the founder's journeys. Well, I should back up. I'm a journalist and I do a lot of personal profiles of founders and leaders and, people who have done some pretty remarkable things. And especially in like the height of the pandemic years when we were all kind of like home, I started writing more and more of them because interviewing people for my Forbes column became like my social life. You know what I mean? And when you do something so much, you become, fairly, you start to make certain observations and you start to notice patterns and trends. And what I noticed was every time someone would tell me their story about the thing they created or the, milestones they achieved, it was all born of something they learned while they were undergoing a setback. And I was like, why does every story seem to follow the same pattern? Do we just love drama? Right? Do we need to have some sort of like hero's journey? Like you have an obstacle and you overcome it and move forward. But it felt like there was more to that. And it felt like more than I could really articulate in a 800 to 1500 word article. And so I started doing a little bit of research. I started reading a lot of psychology, nonfiction books by a lot of behavioral scientists and academics and neurologists. And I couldn't really find anything that talked about what people do after setbacks, like how setbacks kind of propel us forward. And I found like tiny bits of it here and there for sure. And I cite a lot of the research and a lot of the quotes from certain books in the setback cycle. But I really didn't find anyone who did a deep dive into setbacks themselves. So I just started, kind of like you, I just started highlighting stuff and taking notes and like just casually exploring this theory. And then I started talking to people about it, and everyone was like, wait, that's brilliant. What? Tell me more. How can I learn more? And I was like, I got to learn more. And so then I started purposely interviewing people who could talk to me about setbacks, more on the expert side than the founder and leader side. And lo and behold, I ended up turning it into a book proposal that, again, if anyone listening has ever attempted to write a book or written a book, that process is really rife with setbacks. So of course I turn it into a book proposal. I send it out. I get rejected from every agent and editor. And then I did the whole thing, but I just kept going. I took what I learned from those setbacks and I kept going, because once I realized the power that this book could have and the way that it could actually change people's lives, there was no way I wasn't doing it. Like, I was making this happen, and made it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you did. I would love to know, like, with all of those conversations, right? You would have had hundreds and hundreds of conversations, like you said, even just prior to writing the book, being a journalist. So rubbing shoulders with, as you said, business leaders. Was there patterns that you found or something really surprising when doing this research?
The most surprising thing I found, and it's, I'm sure we'll get into the 4 phases of the setback cycle in a bit, but what I was surprised to find was how many people, myself included, who refused to acknowledge they were in a setback, who just wanted to power through and pretend it wasn't happening and act like everything was fine and ignore the reality of what was happening. And that's why the first phase of the setback cycle ended up being called establish, because you think that setbacks are these big, dramatic, obvious, life-changing things, and some are, but there's a whole category of setbacks that you can be so oblivious to, and you can spend days, weeks, months, years just establishing that you are in a setback, right? How many people do you know who, it took so long to get out of a relationship, or took way too long to finally leave their job because they were just kind of floating along and coasting and telling everyone around them, oh, it's fine, I can hang on a little longer, even though they knew and you knew it wasn't right for them. That's like sleepwalking into a setback. And that happens far more often and is way more common than I ever knew. And that was the most surprising thing, and something I very much related to.
With that, so what are some of the obvious signs? Because that's the thing, right? When we have hindsight, it's like, oh, they were all there. It's so obvious. It's like, are you kidding me? Did you even have your eyes open? But when you're in it, I guess you beautifully said it. It's like we're sleepwalking through life and moments and situations. What are the signs that could help us go, hey, you're kind of entering a setback, or you're kind of sitting in one right now?
I'll tell you the signs, and then I'll tell you some tools you can use to sort of like wake yourself up and overcome them, or at least realize it. Because once you establish you're in a setback and you realize you're in one, it's not like you have to take action immediately.
Right.
We just need to wake you up and have you sort of name the moment you're in. And so some signs that you might be in a setback are they're the same. They mimic the signs of depression and anxiety, right? You wake up and you're just not motivated to do whatever it is you want to do. You just want to get back into bed. You dread going to work every day. You dread talking to your partner every day. You have like physical discomfort, like your shoulders are tense and you feel like you're always walking around like holding your breath. These are like physical signs of discomfort, and you really obviously all of our systems are connected, and you really, really, if you stop to, I guess, like evaluate what you're feeling and how your body is existing in this moment, you might realize that you're not as comfortable as just because you're on autopilot doesn't mean you're comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And if you feel a little bit like purposeless and checked out, I think a lot of times people confuse ease and comfort with, doing well. Like, oh, this is easy. I'm comfortable. I'm good at this. But the other side of that, the other questions to ask are you challenged? Is this work motivating you? Are you trying to get better? Are you learning new things? Are you excited? Are you, feeling kind of lit up by whatever you're doing in your day-to-day life, right? And again, this could be work related, it could be relationship related, it could be societal, it could be
Yeah.
something you're doing like a team sport, a volunteer activity. It could be your major if you're a college student,
Yeah.
and you pay attention to the physical signs, and it's the stress response. If you're always feeling fight or flight or freeze, you're probably in a setback in some area of your life. Now, the best way to really see if this is what's happening, I have an exercise in the book called the alarm clock checklist, but one one thing I really love, and there's some really good journaling prompts in that exercise which you can look up, but one thing I really love is just journaling. And I don't mean like free writing for an hour. I mean like sitting down for the first 2 minutes of your day and just kind of bulleting out a couple things. And so the things I like to write out are, what am I excited about? And if I can list one or two things, that's great. What am I feeling right now? Motivated, tired, exhausted, whatever it is. What's my motivation scale from 1 to 10? And then you kind of list your activities of the day. Like, what do I have today? Do that for a month, 2 months, 3 months. And if you look back and you see what you wrote about how you're feeling, and you correlate those feelings or maybe a lack of motivation with certain activities you have on any given day, you're going to notice patterns that you didn't realize were there. And sometimes we can't make these connections unless we write it down and do like the mundanity of reading our motivation every day. It's like sort of annoying, but let me tell you, going back through some old journal entries of mine, they're very illuminating. You'd be surprised how much you don't know about yourself until you keep track of it.
Yeah, it makes so much sense because I think I did a bit of a weird face when you're chatting then, Amy, because I'm like, oh, I remember being in that, like, it would have been signs of that setback moment. But that's the thing is, I think where I got stuck, and I'd love your help here, is how do you tell if it's just an obstacle and a part of the process that you have to progress through and you have to stay in it and stick with it and move around and through it versus, yeah, that's a setback. That's
That's
like,
such a good question.
there.
That is such a good question. A setback is defined as a reversal or check in progress. So it is, if you can visualize being on a path and moving forward and
Mhm.
working towards a goal or moving in a certain direction, then something unexpected happens and bumps you backwards. Maybe not all the way back to start, maybe just a couple steps backwards, but a setback is truly a reversal in progress. So, yes, so last night I had a setback. I basically, like, you could see how it's defined as an obstacle, but to me it was a setback because I was cooking dinner for my family. I was cooking chili. We all love it. Everyone was excited to eat the chili. I had about an hour to do it before I had to pick up my daughter from gymnastics. And I do it and I nail it and I'm so pumped and the house smells so good and everyone's excited. And I'm about to pick her up from gymnastics when I look on my counter and I see the chicken stock that I had just bought from the grocery store. And I realize that's not what I put in the chili. I put a different chicken stock that had been in my fridge for God knows how long. I just hadn't thrown it away. It had totally expired. And that you are not allowed to keep that in your fridge for more than 3 days. And this was probably a month old. So in that moment, I realized I had ruined the whole chili. Like we couldn't eat that. I couldn't serve that to my family. It was probably like super expired, unsafe. We were debating. We were like, could we? I don't know. We decided not to. But the reason it wasn't just an obstacle, like I made a mistake in the recipe. But to me, it was a setback because I have so much client work right now. I have so many projects that I need to be doing that the fact that I took time and I did this and I spent so much time doing this when I could have been doing something else, or I, cooked dinner and then I had to restart. Like I had to go backwards and like figure out something else to make for dinner. Like my husband had to run to the grocery store. Like it was a setback in terms of like managing our time more than just like the obstacle or the mistake of messing up a recipe. Do you see how it's like a little bit of a reframe? Like if I have nothing better to do and all the resources and money and like food waste isn't a thing, sure, it's a little mistake. We learn from our mistakes and we move forward. But to me, the amount of time that I lost in that process was, to me, it was a setback in terms of time management.
Yep, makes sense. Okay. Oh, the chili.
You see what I mean? It's like the tiniest little things, and you can have the micro daily setbacks that are just as impactful. And I felt it, like I physically felt so defeated, so low, so horrible. And again, like I'm over it today. But if
Yeah.
if you have a little kid and you're just like trying to get out the door in the morning and you have a good routine down and then something happens, it sets you back. And again, it's a time setback and then you're going to be late. So
Yep, thank you for that example. That makes sense. So I want to dive into the four-part process because for someone who's listening in right now, and if they're in it, Amy, like when it's just like, I am fucking deep in this. Like
yeah.
how I remember those feelings. Like I'm thinking my brain keeps bouncing between a couple of big setbacks, but I had the same feeling. And in a way, it was isolating, and probably isolated myself because it's I go in and it's that shame which I have heard is like blame turn
Yeah.
inwards.
Yeah.
And it's the self-doubt becomes the loudest it's ever been. Like you're just kind of in that and it's like, okay, how am I getting out of this thing? Because I couldn't see it at the time. I'm like, oh my God, I'm done, it's over. Like that part, what I thought it was going to be, clearly not for me. Where do we start when we're at that point?
So once you've established that you're in a setback,
Mm-hmm.
you've gone through phase one. Congratulations. You're in the setback cycle. Welcome. Second phase, so it's the 4 E's: establish, embrace, explore, and emerge. The second phase, embrace, is the absolute worst phase because this is where we have to deal with what we're feeling, deal with the negative emotions, deal with the discomfort. But this is where the transformation happens. If you really, so many of us, myself included, even as the setback expert, I want to fast forward through every embrace phase I ever have, But embrace is when you sit with the discomfort, or the feeling of failure, or the feeling of, being self-critical or feeling criticized by others, whatever shame or blame you're feeling, you have to just dig into it. Like you got to go through, what's that saying? Like the only way out is through. You have to really sit with it and just try to get what you can out of it. And I find that you can actually cycle through your setback faster if you really sit with the discomfort initially, because then it doesn't like drip out of you in unexpected ways. Like you control it a little bit more than it controls you.
Mm-hmm.
Sit with it, and this is really where you evaluate, you learn, you analyze, and you say, why did that happen and why did it affect me so much, and how can I do it differently next time, and what do I need to do to kind of overcome this?
Mm.
You might not have all those answers yet. You probably won't.
Mm.
You have to kind of deal with what you're feeling in order to move through it. So once
And
you've done oh, go ahead.
sorry, I was going to say, I think it would have been in your book somewhere, but you were speaking about, and I get it, right? Because when you're in that phase, like the thoughts that you're having and the things that you're saying to yourself, it's not great. Like the narrative that we're running is so heightened at that stage.
Yeah.
And you said, because I wrote it down here, you said if you create a narrative based on your biggest moments of self-doubt, you'll find the evidence to prove it. So it's nearly like, how do we got to shift that narrative as well, right? Because it's just so powerful.
Yes, I did. So I did a TEDx talk a couple months ago about how setbacks set the stage for reinvention. And this is what the whole talk is about. It's about taking your biggest moments of self-doubt. Like, I think I'm not intelligent. I think I'm not intelligent because so-and-so questioned my intelligence, or because I talk too much and people have gotten the wrong impression. Like, I'm bubbly and energetic. And so they think that's the sign of someone who has a lack of intelligence, which is totally untrue. I'm very smart. And so you have to find the counter argument to support, to combat the self-doubt and support the counter argument. So if you really just kind of look at the facts, like you try to, remove your emotions from it, you just make a list, like, am I intelligent? Proof of intelligence, lack of intelligence. And you kind of like list your credibility, list your accolades. Like, I'm a best-selling author. I had a really successful 20-year marketing career. Now I run a really good consulting company. I've gotten every single one of my clients through referrals from current clients. I must be doing a good job. You know what I mean? But that CEO of my company, she always doubted me. She always thought I wasn't smart. She always questioned my intelligence. She made me, jump through hoops to get a promotion that I deserved years before that. You know what I mean? And so that self-doubt can come through way stronger, even though it's like a list of one versus the list of 25 things that prove it otherwise. But if you just make the list, look at it.
If you're just laser focused on that, it doesn't matter if there's 25 other things. It's where your focus is, where that focus goes. It's like everything follows. Your like thoughts will follow that focus, and then your feelings follow that focus. We have one of our ladies, Gen G, actually in our program. So we have named, that voice that you have, that inner critic, and she can be a bit of a bitch sometimes. So she's Sheena in our network. So Sheena, when we need Sheena to sit down, but it can be loud.
Yeah. Your inner critic. I mean, I have a whole chapter about the inner critic, and why she gets so loud. And you just need to call in that inner hype person and name her and give her a whole personality. So my inner critic is Roz, and she's got like a raspy voice. Like, she wants you to kind of stay where you are and not move forward. Like, she's not interested in personal growth. She's like, get back here, get it, stay in the backyard. You can't go further than, the front. You can't go down the block. You can't leave for the big city. You got to stay right here, because Roz is not growing. So she wants you to stay back with her. But I have Rhoda, who's inspired by Mary Tyler Moore's fictional best friend from the Mary Tyler Moore show, Rhoda Morgenstern. And Rhoda's saying, like, girl, you go, you do your thing. Like, you're the best. You're amazing, And so you have to, kind of like call in the other side when one side gets loud and just let them duke it out. And talk to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we've got the embrace stage, which is phase 2. And so that's kind of learning. That's what I'm hearing. Learning from yourself, like digging in, sitting with it, going deeper than just what you think it is, going into what it feels like and what you're learning from this. Okay. Anything to add in the embrace stage?
So much to the embrace phase, but you'll have to read the book to get the whole thing, because after embrace, which again is just like the most difficult phase, after embrace, you get to go to explore. And your reward for getting through embrace is that you get to the most fun phase where you just get to play. You get to try all different things, but you don't have to commit to anything yet. And I love this phase, maybe because of the non-committal aspect of it, but also because of the playful aspect of it. Like, this is where we tap into our superpowers and we really try to find that beautiful place where our passion and our strength intersect. That's how you climb out of a setback. You say, you know what? I tried this. It didn't work. What can I do better? What can I do that's better? That's more fulfilling. That's more, true to who I am. That's going to drive my motivation. That's going to, make me excited to wake up every morning and go do whatever I'm doing. And like, what's a life I can live that's just like more true to who I am and who I want to be.
Yeah, it makes so much sense, because even like I'm thinking of one of the setbacks I had, and it was, I think I got so just in that phase of, but this is how it is. This is what you do. This is it, versus this different lens of, yeah, but if you didn't know how it was done, how would you do it now? if you didn't know what you knew, if you didn't know or were told that this is the way and this is how things work, right? It's like, what would you do now? How would you do it differently? But when I was in it, it was just like that. This is it.
It just
I
seems
can't,
so
I can't see what else I would do. I can't see a different path for me. Like it's this or nothing. And it's nearly like you need to be kicked out of there to be able to discover, oh my God, there's so many ways. But they don't come to, like, they didn't come to me when I was in it.
Yeah, because you're on a path and you're moving in a direction that's laid out for you that you can see. Why would you go carve a different path when everything is going swimmingly?
Mm-hmm.
Right? When things are going well, we're not really learning. We're not taking the time to do the embrace phase. We're not
Nope.
doing enough introspection. I mean, some people are, and we all should be, but it's not quite the same as when
Mm-hmm.
the rug is ripped out from under you and you have to completely rebuild, right? You're bumped backwards. The path ahead is less clear, it's more murky. You have to build a new path. There's one quote in my book from one of the leaders I interviewed, and she said, women feel like they are holding up a heavy wall that is just crushing them. And they're just holding it up. They're using all their strength to hold it up. And then eventually they can just let the wall crash down. When the wall crashes down, the whole room opens up. And I just
love
love that quote because it's a visual of why the setback cycle works and why it's terrible, of course, because you have to now rebuild the room, but you can build it in your own way now.
Yeah, you get to build it. And that is part of phase 4.
Phase 4 is emerge. That's when
Yeah.
we emerge from our setback. Like we have our Phoenix moment. I mean, there are some complications within emerge because I don't know when this episode's going to air, but right now we're recording it in January. It's the new year. And so many people just made all these New Year's resolutions. And I think, in December, it's like, oh, I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to get 10,000 steps a day. I'm going to exercise for 30 minutes, 3 times a week. And you have all these big plans. And then it comes time to actually take action.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, taking action, actually, following through on the plans you made is the hardest part. Actually taking action and moving forward, it can be very, very complicated and scary. And so you can go through the setback cycle, you can come out of it, you can emerge with the greatest of ideas, but actually acting on it is a whole other world. But that is your emerge phase. That is when you come out of the setback cycle and you've carved that new path forward and now you're just on it.
I feel like as you're going through this process, like what do you say to women? Because what I find is we can be really hard on ourselves,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
really hard on ourselves. And I think that self-compassion can go a long way. But how do we, maybe how do we access that a little bit earlier?
I mean, you just have to give yourself grace, right? Especially in the embrace phase, you have to really say, okay, this went wrong. Yes, I had, a role in it. Whatever mistake I made, whatever, you could get in a spiral where you're just totally blaming yourself or you're totally blaming others. That's wrong. It's almost always a combination of both. So take the responsibility for what you did or what decisions you made or even what inaction. Your inaction is an action. Take responsibility for that, but also acknowledge that it probably wasn't all your fault. Like there were probably other factors at play that were outside of your control or other people contributed to, and acknowledge whatever they did and don't hold a grudge forever. Like wish them well and move on and like move forward because that, that's holding yourself back and continuing to shame yourself or blame others isn't going to serve you. We're not learning anything by, by holding on to resentment. So take what you can, leave what you don't, and move forward. And you just have to give yourself grace because you are human. You are human and you're going to make mistakes. And every single human being is going to go through the setback cycle. It's just a question of whether or not you recognize it for what it is and you harness the power that it holds.
Absolutely. And, even in saying that, like, and I agree with that. I'm like, I don't know if we're getting out of this life without a setback. That is just part of the beautiful human experience that we have. But you also, there's the other side of that in you say, let's not glorify it though. Like people's like, do I need to have a setback to have success?
Yeah, no, I don't want anyone to have a setback. I wrote the book because you will inevitably go through a setback and I want you to understand the process that you will probably go through. But what I do wish for everyone is that their setback isn't, a really earth-shattering, horrible one, and that it's minor and you could recognize it for what it is and go through the cycle and move forward without a lot of collateral damage.
Absolutely. Well, is there anything else, Amy, that you want to leave us with, that those listening in, you just want them to be equipped with?
Look, I think whether you're going through it and you're going through it, or you're listening to this and you're wondering, am I in a setback? Do I want to acknowledge maybe some of the discomfort I'm feeling? Or if you just want to have the tools to kind of get through your next one, just know this. Wherever you are in the cycle, you will get through it and you will emerge with such a sense of accomplishment and a real understanding that you are capable of so much more than you ever thought possible. And that is the power of the setback cycle. You're going to go through it anyway. You might as well understand what it is you're experiencing and have the tools to work through it.
It's so true. Like, I think of the couple that are in my mind as we're having this conversation, and now I'm grateful for them. I can't imagine, and I don't even want to imagine where I would be or who I would be without them. That scares me. Like, that scares me more than the setback itself. And so when you have it, and I think that's the thing, is I know more will come, but it's, having that experience of one, and, whether you read the book and you can intentionally now go through it, which is great. I'm like, oh man, I wish I had this book when I was in it. But truly, you come out the other end. It's like, wow, I don't even know where I'd be, but I know that it wouldn't be okay. So I'm so glad that I had those setbacks that I did, like, so grateful for them. So I just want people to know that as well. You will get to a place where you are grateful and you're like, oh man, it's given me just so many beautiful things in life. So many beautiful things.
Yeah. And even with that knowledge, I also want to share that when you are in a setback, it doesn't make it feel better in the moment. You will have that knowledge and understanding, which is great, but don't expect it to feel better in that moment.
It still feels like shit in there.
Like shit. I can tell you, because I have all the tools. I have all the tools, and my setbacks still feel like shit. And I lost an hour and a half of my life cooking chili that no one ate last night. So setbacks happen, and may they be as mundane as the chili.
For everyone listening in. And you do the tools that you have in your book. So at the end of the book, everyone listening, there are so many tools and frameworks and questions, and that alone is just incredible. So, Amy, where can everyone grab your book? Where can they follow you?
The setbackcycle.com is the website. If you want to go learn more, I'm on Instagram at Amy Show, AMYSHO. And if you want to buy the book, go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, your local bookstore. And please get in touch and let me know what you think. Let me know if you did the journaling prompts at the back of the book. And I have a newsletter where I send out other journaling prompts that I've come up with in my coaching and my consulting. So if you want to keep in touch, just join me there and come say hello.
Great. Amy, thank you so much. And again, thank you for doing this work and writing this book, because it's just so incredibly helpful. And I know it's going to help everyone who goes and grabs it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.